All right. Let folks trickle in here. Give it about 30 seconds. All right. Awesome. Well, appreciate everybody hopping on here. Excited to have you all here for our SPF and Plex webinar demo with a customer. For introductions, my name is Paul. I've been with the Paperless Parts team for a little over 4 years here. We'll walk through our agenda here shortly, but I'll kick it over to the SPF team to introduce themselves as well as Chris, and then we'll dive right into our agenda.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Hunter Schlinker. I'm with SPF America. I am our sales and business development guy here. All the pricing, everything goes through me, so I work very closely with Paperless and Plex day to day.
My name is Victor Caballero. I'm the engineering manager at SPF. I handle integrating new process and improving current operations, along with any R&D and design applications.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Balo. I'm industry manager for Discrete Industries within our product management group here at Rockwell Automation, responsible for the MES business unit, where I've been with Plex and now Rockwell for about 21 years.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll run through a quick slide deck here. Nothing too crazy before we get into the demonstration. In regards to what we will cover today, will be, again, a little background on Paperless Parts as an organization, as well as a lot of the SPF team, as well as the Plex team to share a little bit about their organizations as well. From there, we'll jump into a demonstration of Paperless Parts, how organizations very similar to SPF are leveraging Paperless Parts today. From there, we'll transition into how the Plex as well as Paperless Parts integration interacts and allow Chris to speak on their organization and on the Plex side as well. And then follow up towards the tail end of the conversation with a Q&A. Please feel free to ask any questions throughout, and we'll make sure to cover those towards the tail end of the conversation. We'll allot for roughly around 10 minutes at the end of the conversation. A little bit about us. So we currently support roughly around 900 organizations across the United States today. So Paperless Parts is primarily supporting custom part manufacturers from high mix, low volume organizations all the way through larger multi-site organizations as well. We are CMMC compliant. We are hosted on the Amazon Gov Cloud and can store up to ITAR, NIST, and CMMC level 2 components directly within Paperless Parts securely. Currently today, we sit roughly around about 125 employees strong, and I would say a large portion of that is on our R&D as well as our customer support side as well. Jump to the next slide. Within here, we kind of break down the platform into, I would say, 4 pillars. So primarily organizations leveraging Paperless Parts are looking for, a workflow centralization and automation process. So the ability to store, triage, and track estimates in one native platform, the ability to add automation into their pricing and costing logic. So what we'll cover in the demonstration today is how we're using information off of 3D models as well as prints to enable costing and pricing logic to map that into your Plex system, and also be able to enhance that customer buying experience. So also being able to have the ability to natively send quotes directly out of Paperless Parts to be able to enhance that experience, and then integrate into your tech investments. I would say roughly around 75% of current Paperless Parts customers are leveraging an ERP system as well. So how can we actually navigate that integration between your Plex integration as well as Paperless Parts? And I'll kick it over to the SPF team to tell us a little bit about them.
All right. Thank you, Paul. So SPF has been around for 49 years now. We are coming up on our 50th anniversary in February 2027. We're headquartered in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and we're still a family-owned company, something we're very proud of. We are a fully integrated, vertically integrated copper fabrication, finishing, manufacturing facility. VAVE is a big thing we do here. Value analysis, value engineering for assemblies, for kitting, and for your overall components. So we use paperless. It's very integral to our operation here as far as our pricing and quoting goes. It takes a large amount of complicated processes and allows us to simplify it down to get quotes out quickly and efficiently. And we're supplying to everyone in any industry that requires copper. So it also allows for that flexibility for us. I've used paperless parts here, and I used it at a different organization for manufacturing as well. I've been using it for about 6 years now, and the difference between that operation and this operation is the Plex integrations that allow for it for paperless parts are very, very helpful. The previous softwares didn't allow for paperless to work with them for whatever reason, and that has been a big help in streamlining things here at SPF as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Hunter. And from here, we will kick it over to the Rockwell Plex team.
Thanks, Paul. So Plex is part of the Rockwell Automation product umbrella. Rockwell is the only automation solution provider that can support all levels of the ISA 95 model. From a level 1 control system, such as distributed control systems, smart devices, power control, up to the level 3, which is your MES, CMMS, asset performance type capabilities, to the top of the pyramid, level 4 supply chain planning and ERP, enterprise resource planning, which is where Plex resides. So it's actually here in the ERP product that we're going to be talking about our integration capabilities with paperless parts today. Next slide, Paul. So Plex is a multi-tenant software as a service application focused exclusively on manufacturing environments, right? So we have today roughly 3,000 different plants across 400 plus logos in 43 different countries. And again, our support is, like I said, manufacturing environments, supporting discrete process and food and beverage manufacturing. Next slide, Paul. And so Plex ERP provides support for all the functions in a manufacturing environment in a single system for shop floor to top floor activities and for data from one to many X plants. However, there are business processes that require specialized support. An example of that is quoting, right? So Plex does support the storage of quotes and creating of orders, but Plex does not always meet the requirements with regards to the process of supporting the workflow for pulling a quote together. Due to this process having uniqueness from customer to customer, we've decided to partner with Paperless Parts for creating and organizing of those different types of quotes. Once a quote is won, as we'll see here during the demonstration, Paperless Parts will actually pass the information through using APIs to build the information in Plex and actually build the order in Plex. And we'll see that here in a little bit, where the execution on the shop floor and the delivery through the shipping modules will be completed. So, Paul, why don't you take us away?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chris. So from here, we'll jump into the demonstration of paperless parts. And actually, where I'm going to start is in my email inbox. If I can pull that up now. So what we hear from a lot of our current customers, and I guess Hunter, take us through this as well from your side, is that more often than not, they're typically receiving RFQs via email. Hunter, I guess, is that typically how you all are receiving them as well today?
Quite frequently, yes. We see a lot of pretty much everything comes through email, even if depending on what your system is for your own website or anything. Typically, most manufacturers and most companies, if you put an inquiry on their website and you attach documents, it'll still send you an email with said attached documents and information that was entered on the website. So I would say overall, yes, it's always emails.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Yeah, typically what we're hearing from a lot of our similar customers to all as well is that they're receiving some sort of email very similar to this with the associated part numbers, quantities, and attached are their step files, zip files, or associated drawings that would be needed to facilitate this estimate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to forward this directly into my Paperless Parts account. And from here, where this is going to populate is into our quote dashboard. So within here, the best way to think about this is the ability to have an area where you can now track the statuses of a quote, begin to prioritize those quotes, see which accounts we're working on, the created date, due date, and where in the estimating process it is currently. So we can configure paperless parts to mirror your process flow and your quote to cash process in regards to, are we waiting on material pricing, outside service pricing, engineering review, any executive reviews, items like that, to mirror your workflow as well. Additionally, on top of that as well, we can create different queues with you all as well, whether we want to queue for different folks in the estimating process, or do this week in progress, or we have quotes outstanding, or any other, I would say, triage processes the organization is going through today. From forwarding in that email, it is going to highlight it here in blue, so it'll automatically populate that information in. And throughout the demonstration here, you're going to see this purple AI icon throughout. That is our internally built AI working in the background to mitigate the amount of manual data entry it takes to facilitate an estimate. So upfront, we will begin to grab a lot of information from the email, such as the RFQ received date, who the associated contact is. We will operate as a lightweight CRM, so we can begin to track KPIs such as order revenue in the last 30 days versus all time, quotes sent to either an account or a specific contact over said period of time as well, and have the opportunity to add any other additional notes we would like on the contact or buyer as well. As I continue to scroll down here, what we're going to see is from forwarding in that email, all of those supporting files will populate in, as well as a screenshot of the email. Ultimate goal here is, how can we now store all of those supporting files securely in one system, and also have the opportunity to unzip those files as well within here too. I guess, Hunter, walk me through, typically, like, from your process before paperless parts to now setting up quotes. How has this process been, being able to have the opportunity to store all of those files in one place?
Oh, it's been a game changer for us. Prior to utilizing paperless parts, we did what a lot of companies do, and we quoted out of macros and whatnot in Microsoft Excel. So you'd have to have a specific folder for the customer, sometimes a specific folder for that quote underneath the customer for each project and the parts, and then you'd have to always be going back and forth to keep track of everything. This for us has cut that time down. It's probably cut 70-80% of the time down on just the prep process of the quotes.
Wow, that's incredible. Even to take it another, I would say, level further as well, Hunter, in regards to the opportunity to bulk create those line items, because the customer was nice enough to send over those part numbers and quantities in the email, we can actually extract those off of the email body to now bulk create our line items. And then from here, what paperless parts will look to do is either look at the associated file name with the thumbnail on here, or look at the associated part number that exists on the print to begin matching our supporting files over into our line items. So oftentimes what we're hearing from a lot of organizations is that they are now starting to receive more and more larger quantity line item quotes, and the ability to triage those seamlessly and get to a decision-making process faster has enabled their teams, to Hunter's point, turn around RFQs faster by not having to spend, hours sifting through part files to gain a better understanding of what are we actually looking at here. Is this the type of work we're actually looking to accomplish or even go after? Hunter, I guess any other benefits here that I missed, or any other, I guess, pieces that have been valuable to you all during this setup portion of the process?
No, I mean, really, you covered everything as far as the setup and everything goes. I mean, that bulk line item creation with it reading that for us, also, I mean, that's an additional time suck that has just gone away. Um, Really, you've covered everything as far as that goes for all the efficiency increases we've seen.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. I'll jump into a line item here. I'll start with a laser bent part. What I have within here is we'll jump into that unique line item. Again, throughout the demonstration, name of the game here is speed, and how can we mitigate the amount of manual data entry it takes to facilitate an estimate. So what we'll attempt to do is begin to extract that part number, revision, and description directly off the PDF. And where we're going to jump to next is actually directly into our part viewer. And so within here, you would have the opportunity to view not only one specific CAD models, but as well as PDFs as well, directly within paperless parts. So within here, what I can do is I can select to interrogate this part file. We're going to look at it through a sheet metal lens. I know this part is aluminum 5052, and we're going to throw this on our laser. While that's analyzing the part file, typically that takes around 15 to 30 seconds. I'm going to jump over into the print. Now, a newer feature we released, I would say roughly around 6 to 9 months ago, is our ability to extract information directly off of the print. So what we're looking for here is the ability to grab, as I mentioned, those part numbers, revisions, descriptions to mitigate a lot of that manual data entry, but also the ability to grab items such as, are there any outside processes on this print that we need to account for? Are there any specs we need to identify within here? Where is the material that I'm searching for on this print? As well as other, I would say, features as well, such as the datums, holes, any dimensions, tolerancing, title blocks that would also be relevant um, to use during the quoting and estimating process. Now, off of this, we also have the opportunity to create rules based off of the information we are extracting. So this is what we would call our requirements review, and also the opportunity to help you again come to that decision-making point faster, or have the ability to train up a junior estimator much easier within paperless parts by capturing a lot of the tribal knowledge that lives within very tenured folks in the organization today. I guess, Hunter, help me understand how you all are using, I would say, this feature today, the ability to grab a lot of this information off prints. Have you created any rules in paperless yet?
We have several rules in paperless. We have different rules that sort these line items into groups. So, it does its thing, it reads the print, and it automatically suggests a group that it needs to fall into with a specific set of manufacturing lines. So it'll take a look, and based on geometry, based on thickness, based on XYZ requirements from the print, it can say if it needs to start on a punching machine, off a coil press, off a laser, what material it recommends. And that has been a real game changer for us as far as our quoting team goes. Our quoting team right now is using paperless parts. They were always trained on paperless parts, and one of our quoters actually started in our shop. She worked at one of our bar punching machines, so she had a great understanding of reading the prints and understanding what she was looking for. And this, utilized as a tool, has only made everything much, much faster and much, much smoother for her, as well as our other quoter who didn't necessarily have a manufacturing background but had a quality background. So there was some overlap there. And this tool allows them to see any of the little stuff they may have missed, and allows them to help anybody else looking at our quotes, that engineering or anything else that have questions.
No, that's a great story, and we're happy to hear we can provide value for other folks in the organization as well. Um, I guess, Victor, from your standpoint, I know you played like an integral role in setting up, building out that process with paperless parts. What was that, I would say, onboarding experience like, learning about the new features, and how have you been able to leverage our customer success team to navigate any of those, I would say, additional resources we're continuing to provide?
I'll say initially there was a good amount of work having to go through and check things. So it was a lot more double checking and making sure and verifying things. With all these upgrades and all these features, it just eliminates a lot of that. So instead of having to have somebody manually check things and having it automatically shows up in front of you. And a lot of these processes that we would have to build ourselves, or you have to manually implement something different, it is now just showing up. So it's a lot easier just to review stuff and make recommendations on anything we need, and if it's not there, it will always get updated eventually, or relatively quickly, depending on the complexity. And it's been really helpful to have those changes.
Awesome. No, that's great feedback. I really appreciate that. I'd say very similar to on PDFs, what we're also attempting to do is extract information off of that CAD drawing as well. So we're also beginning to not only one, flatten that step file, but also two, look for any costing or pricing variables that we need to account for while being able to cost this part. So, if we're looking at the flat, we can be able to look at, any of the dimensions on the part. We can grab the volume area, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner as well. But we'll also be able to identify, how many bends are on this unique component, or How many cutout features do we need to walk through here within paperless parts as well? Very similar to that, we can also create DFM warnings within here as well. So oftentimes when I'm speaking to fabricators, we can hear, cut near bend is often one that pops up, or, no corner relief. So different, I would say, custom logic we can build in here as well. And if you can think about it in an if then statement, typically that is what we can map into paperless parts based on your organization as well. I guess Hunter, how often are you guys using, I would say, the part viewer, the PDF viewer? Like how often are you all leveraging this portion of the platform?
Oh, I mean, and Victor, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Absolutely.
every quote, every line item, we utilize it. I utilize it for my checks for before sending the pricing to customers. Our engineering team utilizes it once we get orders. And our CSR department, our customer service department, utilizes it as well when they access Plex for some of the questions that customers may ask. So we're using either the PDF or the CAD model part viewer every day.
Yeah. I guess, Hunter, tell me a little bit more about how you all are enabling folks outside of the estimating process to use the tool. I know you mentioned, even folks on the shop floor have the opportunity to use the part viewer. I feel like that's a great way to get more value out of the tool. How do you see it benefiting you all even post order or post processing of facilitating that estimate?
So really, it gives I would say the biggest user past engineering is going to be our quality department. It kind of quoting, of course, is going to be the top, engineering, quality, customer service. And we see that at all levels. For any new parts being reviewed, engineering gets to use the viewer and the whole, everything that we quoted in paperless to double check run rates, double check dimensions, see how it works in 3D space, and see what the specific specs are, just so they can be sure when uploading everything in our programs. Quality uses it for any returns or any FAI inspections that need to be done. They're able to use the viewer and see, okay, this is what this is supposed to look like. This is how this is supposed to function. Here are the specs and here are the required things from the customer. And very similarly for our customer service department is they are taking a look at it. We have one of the great things about paperless additionally is that ability to store on a finished quote the drawings and the files associated with those parts. So if anything has an updated revision, anything has an updated change to a component, they go back in, they take a look at the current quote, they take a look at the old quote, and they're able to take a look at those drawings and see, okay, this part number is still this, but the revision has changed. This is when the revision changed. So we should be able to update for these orders. And so it's very multifaceted as far as we're concerned to be able to use that at each of several departments.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think what really resonated there is that, transparency across the organization is extremely important. And how can we enable folks in each department to leverage paperless parts to its fullest capabilities, but also be able to have that streamlined communication. So now everybody knows where that, I would say, historical data or tribal knowledge lives across a single line item or a quote within paperless parts as well. Awesome. From here, I think that's a good transition into actually how we're building out the costing and pricing logic within paperless parts. So again, we'll start with this, WBend part. We can automatically grab the geometry directly off of the file. Within here, we can also have an easy area to see what we found on the associated print as well. Again, more of a trust but verify process, but at least have that ability to view that while we're going through our costing and pricing logic. And within here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a processee. So I know, based on my travel knowledge in my organization, I'm going to throw this on our laser. From here, I can select the material and we will extract that directly off of the PDF. And once I hit populate, this is going to populate an order of operations, almost like a router per se, that the team can now begin at least basing their costing and pricing logic off of. The benefit here to having an integration with Plex specifically for this conversation is we would be able to tie in all of the machining centers that exist within Plex today, map them into paperless parts. So as we talk about it later, once that job is awarded, we can push over that BOM routing, any additional notes we have on this quote directly from paperless into Plex to mitigate the amount of manual data entry it takes to go from quote to estimate. Um, I guess Hunter, today, tell me a little bit more about, the ability to not only one, bulk apply costing within paperless parts, but two, the ability to have these dynamic routers within here as well.
Being able to bulk apply and having the dynamic routers really frees up our quoters for the more specialized tasks beyond data entry. I mean, a lot of quoting before was not just the analysis, but it was the physical and menial data entry that took up a big bulk of the time. And then by the time it's time for the analysis, a KPI that we utilize here is sub 24-hour turnaround times for our quotes. So from the time that you reach out to our customer service team for a quote to the time that you get a quote back on a majority of quotes, you'll get it back within that 24-hour time frame. That wasn't possible prior to us utilizing paperless. That was not even a consideration. We only updated that once that happened because we could go in, say this is going to be cut on the laser. It's made from this thickness of material, and please read the print for the specs. It would assign it to a family, and now all they have to do is go in, make sure that's correct, and then hey, how much do we need? How many are we going to need to produce next month to hit this material minimum purchase? And that's able to be done in 24 hours as opposed to before it was all of the data entry, all of the double checking, then the analysis. You're going to get a quote in a week, and this allows us to turn around in one day.
Absolutely. And I guess, Hunter, great analogy there. Really appreciate it. How have you all seen from a, whether it's a customer satisfaction reporting or, win rate increase, how have you all seen that impact the business or even just internally, maybe your estimators are happier being able to leverage paperless parts because now we've increased quote throughput. Have you seen any of that today or?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Even with our large, we refer to them as project quotes. These are quotes with, 50 to 150 line items. Um, Typically that requires quite a large volume of material, quite varied materials. We're able to turn those around within a week, 2 weeks time, and depending on material availability, outside processes if they're required, and really allows us to get to the customer quickly, especially if they're bidding on projects. We're seeing a lot of that nowadays where, hey, we're bidding for this project. Here's the requirements. How quickly can you get me a quote? And we can start discussing it. Um, Utilizing this has really increased our win rate on the smaller stuff, even potentially repeat work that has to be requoted. They can get a quote in 20 minutes and they don't have to wait on anybody else. And then the larger projects, we're the first ones back to them with material analysis, with clear ideas of how we're going to manufacture. Our customers trust us much more with a reasonably unchanging quote in a quick turnaround time.
That's awesome. Really glad to hear it. Um, I think as we dive into this a level deeper as well, kind of driving into the transparency of how we're actually coming up with a lot of this costing and pricing logic, we have the ability to create rules in the background. So, one rule I see here is anytime a W bend is flagged, I want it to trigger maybe a stoplight emoji. I can always add or remove any operations deemed fit within paperless parts. But the best way I would recommend thinking about a lot of these operations is almost like mini Excel spreadsheets working in the background. So very similar here. So on our press brake operation, based on accounting for the information off of the model, we can account for 6 bends. We can apply that standard setup runtime per bend and have different bend variables based off of that bend size as well. So a lot of organizations will create custom logic that you can typically map into paperless parts based off of bend size, part weights, items like that. One example I often hear is, hey, anytime the part weighs over X pounds or has Y bend, I want to double my labor rate because maybe I need 2 people to put that on the press brake. That is typical logic we can build into paperless parts during the typical onboarding process. Any of these numbers you see in blue are also totally editable. So within here, if I came in and said, paperless, you're a little off, I can always come in, seamlessly make that change, and all of the costing and pricing logic will map. But we'll also be able to see who made that edit and when. So that way, if this ever does become a repeat order, we can go back in and begin to track the edits we are making to these quotes to give organizations better visibility within here as well. Yeah, I guess, Hunter, anything else before I jump into, I'd say, bulk processing as well as I'd say some, larger BOM information?
Honestly, nothing that I can think of off the top of my head.
Perfect.
I'm
That's
happy to
awesome.
go move right on.
Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to jump back to the top of the quote. So I'm looking at this quote. I can see, line item 2, let's say 3, 4, and 7 are all very similar to laser bend parts. What I can do is I can hit actions. I can update my processes in bulk. So if I hit, our fabrication laser, we'll pretend in this instance it's all like material, and apply those changes. What's going to populate in the background is costing and pricing logic for all of these unique line items. So if I jump into line item 2, by selecting that processee, all of my costing and pricing logic is going to map in. And we can see there's no warnings. Maybe we want to make a change. And these operations can also be dynamic. So Paperless Parts on this part file identified quite a few bends if I come up to the thumbnail here. Where if I jump to line item 7, this is just a simple lasered part. By selecting that same exact processee, Paperless Parts did not account for any bends, so we would not populate any press brake operation. So these are typical rules we can add in during that onboarding process to make these not only operations fairly seamless from Paperless Parts into Plex, but also dynamic in your processes to enable you to have to, rather than going through and building out operation by operation in each quote, we can now bulk apply these processes and trust that the operations can be dynamic and still have that trust but verified process. Um, Hunter, I know you mentioned a little bit the bulk processing, larger line item RFQs are typically the ones that you're getting more and more now. How often do you all leverage the bulk processing tool to be able to turn around quotes faster? Sounds like a lot, but I guess just want to reconfirm.
Well, we do work with it very frequently, especially with, our current customers that we have, long-standing relationships with are very good, about sending us these large volumes of quotes, potentially for new projects they have coming in. And this allows us to not only sort those parts, we can sort them by process type, we can sort them by material type, and then we can focus down on doing everything in, like you're saying, in bulk processes. So for these large project quotes, sometimes we will split them into two or three and be able to assign the bulk processing to each one. Um, and that cuts down on a lot of time as far as getting everything set up and started.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that as well. From here, we'll jump into organizations that are doing larger assemblies as well. So within Paperless Parts, not only do we have the ability to work with single components, but oftentimes we're hearing of organizations using larger assemblies as well. So what we can do here is, again, we can begin to extract information off of that model or PDF. And we also can break out the child BOM with all of these sub-assemblies as well as the flat BOM as well. So oftentimes when we're speaking to organizations, this tends to be a typical value driver to have the ability to seamlessly break out that bill of material to be able to go through and cost larger assemblies, typically faster than what they're doing in, I would say, their Excel system today. And the ability to quickly look at these thumbnails and say, okay, these are all, fabricated parts, very similar to that bulk applying process here. I can update that process, select our laser, and apply those changes. Hunter, do you all leverage our nesting today? Is that a
Oh,
feature you
yes.
typically use?
We
Okay, yeah.
leverage the nesting very consistently, whether it be for retaining material. We find of several parts with the same material. We want to make sure that everything can be, nested together and as optimized. And also the best possible way for new parts to discover how many can fit and what we can get as far as the best pricing for our customers.
Absolutely. I'm actually going to make these quantities a little more fun. I'll do 100, 500, 1,000. Quickly save those changes. And within our paperless nesting module, we'll have the opportunity to open that directly right here. I can select the associated files I would like. If they do have like material and thickness, we can do multi-component nesting. Again, just using a single line here. Where I can prep the sheet nest. So we can begin to select, our grain direction, our cost method. We can pull in with the Plex integration your material costing as well, but we'll also be able to get into, adding in any standard edge buffers or part-to-part clearances, and have the opportunity to generate an actual visual of these 6 nests as well, where paperless parts will actually show us that. So if we give them 1 second to load here, awesome. Within here, we can begin to see, how many total sheets, the total used area, scrap area, and total used area and the parts per sheet on here as well. Hunter, I guess, how often do you all download the nest as a PDF to give to your production team or team that nests, so they have a visual of this as well?
Victor, I'm going to let you field that question. Typically, you'd be the one downloading these.
Not much for production. We do it for initial setups just to get for our estimates so we could have for our bill of material usage. But when it comes to actual for the full production for the laser and stuff, we don't really use it. We have a separate program for that. Previously, we didn't really have another method besides this. So this was very useful and we reduced cost by a large amount. But it's been very helpful to have.
Awesome. That's great. I've gone through nesting, operations. Now we'll dive into costing and pricing logic. So within paperless parts, we break down costing versus pricing. So we can see our total raw material, inside processing, outside processing, purchase components, however you all think about costing today. But we can also build in custom pricing logic as well, whether you have, standard customer markups, any standard inside margins. Maybe we're working with a crazy material, so we want to add in, a material markup on here as well. These are definitely typically custom to how you all are thinking about them today, and can be very dynamic within paperless parts of how you all are thinking about it as well. We also want to give you transparency into your costing and pricing as well. So we'll give you that total price, break that down into unit price based on quantities, as well as give you that total profit markup margin within here as well. Jumping into the final piece of the demonstration, so actually sending out a quote out of paperless parts. We always want to, I would say, preview that quote before we send that out. So what we have is called what I would define as like our Amazon checkout buying experience, where we would have your logo, contact information, any quote details here above, and have the opportunity to allow customers to view either a PDF format or view this type of quote directly within paperless parts after you send it to them. And you would always have the opportunity to finalize that quote. I'll get a ton of warnings here because I did not go through every single part, but have the opportunity to finalize and send this over to our customers. Once I hit finalize and send, that would trigger it to jump into that outstanding tab, where then we would be able to track if they have clicked on that digital link, if we opt to choose, have them send that. Gears here as we transition into the Plex integration. So how do we actually go from, we've won an order, it lives within paperless parts. How do we actually get that into Plex for production purposes? The way we would go about that process is we would hit actions, facilitate order. Now with the Plex integration, we would be able to pull in your contacts, materials, operations, purchase components, and a wide array of, I would say, relevant information from Plex today. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select, maybe we're going to do 10 of these. I'm going to hit continue to shipping and payment. We can either have put in their purchase order, credit card, ship to what facility, bill to what facility. Once I hit complete order, that is what's going to trigger the integration between Plex into paperless parts, or paperless parts into Plex. And that's where I will pass it over to Chris to speak to the other side of the integration.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Paul. So let's go take a look after you do all that magic in the background. Let's go take a look at what we'll see over in Plex. If I can get my share. Perfect. So I think you can see my screen now, right, Paul? Okay, perfect. So As Paul had mentioned, right? So in the back end, we're going to use a series of APIs to send some information, and it can be as simple as complex as you want. But in this particular case, what Paul has done is he's created a part. So he sent part information over to Plex, and we will actually see that here. So the one that you sent me, I believe, was, there we go, PP 0847001. So without me having to do any work here, using the APIs, we've created this record and created this part inside of Plex. Not only did we not create the part record, but if I take a look at it, I should see that process routing, all the steps, all the value added steps that came over from the quote. So I was able to build out all 5 operations to produce the part, and also the bill of material that was required to consumed at the first operation to fabricate and make this finished good. So in behind here, if I look into it, I'd also see some rates and see some other things. Now, again, the extent that could be communicated or not can vary. Again, that Plex has an open architecture with a series of RESTful and different APIs. You can send that over there, but I haven't do anything. So from the work that you did in Paperless Parts, you push it over to Plex. Here's the part. Here's the routing. Here's the bill of material. I now have what I need where I can go create a job and actually go execute this this job over on the Plex side. In addition to creating the parts, it from the quote created the actual customer order. So if I look in here, I believe that was with ETMA. Do a search, and there we go. The one that was sent over is a Plex generated order number, but it's for our part, again, the 0847001. And if I look into this, the typical line items, I will see it was created again for a price of $63.20. And I believe the quantity was 10 from the original quote. So that order's here. So now from that, I just create the job, push that out to the shop floor, execute the job through the 5 different work centers, have the available inventory that I can now, with the order in Plex, I can stage a shipment, load that inventory to the shipment, and ship it out and close the order. I don't know. Am I skipping any steps in there, Hunter, Victor? Did I bounce over everything? Is it pretty much once it's sent to Plex, the magic, the rest of the process flow and executing and fulfilling an order is all executed in the Plex side?
Oh yes, no, I don't think you missed anything. It creates the parts for us, helps with the bill of materials, gets that order in there, streamlines the whole process for our team.
Yeah, so that's cool. So it doesn't just send the meta information over to Plex; it actually facilitates the part creation and the order creation, ready to go to production. And I think, right, if there's any discrepancies, correct me if I'm wrong, Hunter, if there's any discrepancies, you can go into Plex and make there's no problems making any changes in the Plex side. If there's, we get to manufacturing time, we realize we need to do something different. But in general, that's probably not the normal flow, right? I'm assuming it comes over probably the correct configuration right from Paperless Parts. So no extra data entry.
No, sir. Now, generally, you are correct. It comes over directly one-to-one. If there's any issue, it throws a flag for us immediately to let us know what needs to be handled, so there's no wasted time.
Awesome.
Excellent.
All right, Paul. I think that's it from the Plex side. I mean, it is that simple. It's kind of a simple demo on my side when everything comes over via integration. So
No,
we
absolutely.
like that. We like that, and I'm sure the team likes that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Victor, I saw your head nodding a lot. I guess from your standpoint, what was the process like onboarding paperless parts and walking through that, I would say Plex integration with our team as well as the Plex team as well?
It was really wonderful. Initially, there was a lot of configurations we had to go through. So the initial errors were there because we weren't used to the system. We didn't understand a lot of how things are supposed to flow. But we could see that error. We were actually working back and forth and try to correct our side, mostly internally, why we were having those problems, things we missed, and just updating that. And now we have a really good system to see if there's anything that is on our side from not entering correctly. We could easily flag that, correct it, and now it's been just a smooth transition of things are flowing really nicely, and not having to manually set up the processes really increased our time on actually processing these information. So it's been really helpful.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, we definitely hope to, I would say, showcase a hand-holding experience during the onboarding process, and we definitely don't want you to feel alone during that time. We know, change management can be very hard, so we try to make sure that we get ahead of things and help you all out as I'd say great as we can. Um, all right, I think that covers everything on the demonstration sides as well. I see one Q&A question here, so I'll open it up to. I'm just gonna share my screen. Open it up to questions. Let's see here. Um, if I can open this, let's see. Are we able to push the thumbnail image into Plex from Paperless Parts? Great question. So today we will push over, I guess, Victor, keep me honest here, a link to the Paperless Parts quote. And from there, the reason why we do it this way intentionally is to maintain cybersecurity for our customers. So again, being hosted in the Amazon Gov Cloud, we're pushing over that um, a link back to the Paperless Parts quote. But I guess, Victor, keep me honest there. I want to make sure I'm speaking to that properly.
Yes, that was one of the things we have references to the actual quote, which is really helpful to track that information.
Awesome. And yeah, Stephen, if you have other questions on that, happy to address those as well. Feel free to shoot me an email. All right. What other, let's say, questions do we have? Let's see if I can stop sharing and see them. All right. How robust is the laser nesting? Does it handle complex geometries? Are you able to specify spacing? How does it manage cut settings in making time studies? Great question. Zachary, would love to, I'd say, chat with you through that with you live. If you have a couple, I'd say, unique part files you want to walk through or any other additional information you want to send over to us, happy to do so as well. I guess, Victor, Hunter, based on your, I guess, experience using our nesting module, how do you all leverage that today? Like, how has that been?
I'll say nesting helps for locating where the the parameters would be, but for rates and times, that's all manually set up and like behind the scenes on the coding. So run rates and profile stuff would depend on how we're set up in how the routing lines are set up or how the actual individual process for the laser. So it depends on what is set up behind the scenes to say what the time rates will be. But yeah, it's good for referencing, it's good for seeing, and it actually keeps us honest where we have to actually do time studies to make sure our theoreticals correct from what is actually happening on the floor and see if there's any differences. So,
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you for that as well. It looks like we got another question from Steven. Um, Chris, maybe I'll have you shoot Steven over an email on this one. I don't necessarily know the answer to this question.
Yeah, my guess is you're getting the warnings. So the integration layer, right? When you go to try to push something over to Plex, and let's say you have Work Center that doesn't exist in Plex, or you're getting a warning in the integration layer. So it won't create in Plex, and but the actual warning you will get in the integration layer that tells you generally what's wrong, right? It looks like you're shaking your head, Victor. Is that
yep.
how yours
That
is
is,
set up as well?
yep, that is something we had to initially go through and we had to correct on our side, see why were those errors going through. And once we see those, we be able to correct it and then it should stop any future errors coming through.
What are some of the common errors, Victor? Is it like missing Work Center or missing an operation type or something like that?
Yep. And usually it's whenever Plex is being added more information. So we added additional work centers, we added something we weren't paying attention and we didn't flow that back to paperless. So we're not keeping a one-to-one. And these errors are a good way to flag that information.
All great questions so far. I haven't seen any others populate in yet. Give it another minute here. Feel free to fire away. Happy to share our contact information as well. Yeah, give it another minute here. I guess in regards to if there are no other questions for closing remarks, I guess, Hunter, Victor, Chris, any other, I guess, final comments you all would like to make as folks jump off here? Oh,
I can make a couple as far as the paperless and Plex. Oh, Chris.
oh, I got that, Stephen. No problem.
But as far as the paperless parts and Plex integration goes, I mean that's a very big game changer. As if you have both of these softwares, it cuts time off of your quoting team, it cuts time off of your customer service, it cuts time off your engineers, and it allows everyone to focus in on the most important aspect of the manufacturing, which is actually getting the parts manufactured. Having all that data is integral, and having two softwares that can communicate that will establish a lot of that data entry for you allows your engineers, your quoters, and your customer service team to focus on the customer and the product.
I'll say on my side, before it was only a manual process. There's nothing that could be done besides manual data entry and having to go through each individual process. With having this automatic integration, it just flows and it just takes care of a lot of things that there was no other opportunity besides just taking manually. So having this reduce that and have something that we could just, if at worst, check things to verify, but at best it is correct, is it dramatically increased our production times, and it made it so that we could keep up with our demands. We could keep up with actually processing and look to have better opportunities instead of having to just take a lot of time of data entry.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. For folks on the call, thank you for attending today. Happy to share our contact information here as well. For if you have any other questions. I know we had one individual reach out. Happy to reach out to you after this. But feel free to take a screenshot of this picture, whatever works best. Feel free to contact us if you'd like any other additional information, and appreciate everybody joining today.